to start by saying a little bit about who we are as an organisation first. So as Ben said in his introduction to me, the CSP is the professional body and the trade union for UK physiotherapy. So we represent about 63,000 members and growing. Now, they're mostly chartered physiotherapists. We've also got students, we've got retired members, we've got physio support workers, but it's very much in that physio space. We've got about 150 staff, and that I think gives a sense of the kind of scale and budget of the operation. And we are coming up for 130 years old, so that puts us among the oldest of the UK trade unions. Now, a bit of reflection here about the CSP and about trade unions in general, which I think gives some context to why we are the way we are with data. So first of all, we're old, we value our heritage, we're democratic, and all of those things can make us a little bit resistant to change. We represent a lot of members, but on pretty lean budgets. And I think in common with a lot of the not-for-profit sector, a lot of our work is actually done by volunteers. We often face quite a hostile world. So we've got hostile employers, we've got hostile governments, hostile regulation. And for the last 4 decades, trade unions have been in decline. So member numbers have stabilized a wee bit in the last few years, but we are about half the strength as a movement as when I was born in 1979. So for the whole of the digital revolution, we've had to be very cautious with our resources. And, okay, that didn't put us in a position to be early adopters of digital tech and digital process. But we've got to a point now where we urgently need to catch up just to stay relevant, like in the present as well as the future of work. And actually, by coincidence, this afternoon, I'm at a conference for an organisation called Unions 21, who are about to launch a report on data in trade unions. So look out for that. I'll ask Ben to send around the link with the details of this webinar. Anyway, that I think gets us to why we at the CSP decided to take a data maturity assessment. Essentially, we are playing catch up, but without money or time to waste. So we need a way to pick the right things to put effort into rather than go at it scattergun. And the Data Orchard framework gets us away from the things that we've always done and away from comparisons with our nearest neighbours who, frankly, are in the same boat as we are. And it's a bit of a reality check for me, personally, a bit of expectation management. And like to explain myself with that. So my background is in data science for the physical sciences, and I spent 10 years at NERC, the Natural Environment Research Council, awful acronym, developing data infrastructure for national and international research communities. And that was an operation that was 45 years in spin up. We had a big team of data and software specialists, and all we had to do all day was sitting around and forecasting and solving emerging challenges in data. So look, I know what data maturity looks like. I know what the end game is, but the CSP isn't going to get there overnight. And this data maturity assessment shows us where we really are right now with data so that we can decide what needs doing first. Okay, how did we go about it? Well, look, at the CSP, we made the slightly unorthodox choice, and it was a wee bit of a gamble to do this anonymously. So we weren't mandating responses. We weren't mandating that everybody takes part in the survey. But I thought it was important for our respondents to feel able to give us their experience, warts and all, rather than telling us what they thought we wanted to hear. And we explained that at an all-staff meeting. We followed it up with an advance warning email, and then again with the introduction that went out with the invitation to the survey. And we said, look, this is why it's in your interest to get your point of view across, and asking them to be honest and objective. Like, I'm not going to identify you. I'm not going to have my feelings hurt by what you say here. Now, we did capture people's teams. So I was able to give sort of semi-targeted nudges where I thought responses looked a little bit thin. And we had very solid support from our leadership. So our CEO actually sent round a reminder after she'd taken the survey saying, like, this is why I found it interesting, but reminding people again why this is important for us as an organization. And in the end, we had over 90 responses. So that was about 60% of our workforce. And it was spread across all of our major functions. And what that means is not only do we get a decent look at where the CSP is as a whole, but we also start to unpick where the variation is across the organization. And okay, what did it tell us? Now, this is where I'm going to try and share my slides. Here we go. All right, so I would summarize this with 3 headline lessons. So first of all, overall, we scored the CSP in the learning stage of maturity. So that's smack bang in the middle of those stages of maturity. And to be honest, I think that's a pretty healthy place for now for the kind of organization we are. You know, there's stuff that we do well. So we've got our regulatory obligations, tech security, cloud computing, sewn up pretty tight. But, you know, we know that we've got a way to go, you know, especially as regulatory demands are only increasing, as internal and external data are only getting more complex. And to be honest, because my colleagues are really ambitious about how they want to be using it. Now, I'll say more about these other lessons in a minute. So just briefly here, lesson number 2, our priority theme to improve on was analysis. And number 3, experience of working with data varies depending on where in the organization you're looking from. Okay, so here a bit more on lesson 2, which is our priority theme. So these are the data maturity themes, and I've ranked them according to how the CSP scored itself. And they're all in that 2 to 3 range, which is the learning stage of maturity. But within that, we're particularly strong on tools and culture, and then it decreases through leadership skills, the data itself, the uses we put it to, and then trailing some way back is analysis. And look, that's still in that learning range. But if there's a factor that's going to limit us getting to the next rung of the ladder, then that's it, right? So we've been comparing analysis at the learning stage to that next rung up. And where we are now, there's lots of words like ad hoc and descriptive and what happened in the past and manual, right? Whereas at the developing stage, it's things like consistent and diagnostic and real-time monitoring and automation and dashboards, right? So that's what we're aiming for. That's our challenge. And it's exciting. But all the talk of automation and real-time monitoring says that we have work to do on our data supply chain. So the analysis end of the data lifecycle doesn't come without all of the other stages lined up to get the right data to the right place at the right time. And I guess for me, this shows the interdependence of these themes of maturity, because a big part of the work that we're going to do in picking up our analysis is actually going to be going towards those other trailing themes. So, you know, crystallizing the uses we put it to and managing the data according to those uses. So here a bit more on lesson 3, that our experience with data, our estimation of data maturity varies across the CSP. So these are the scores clustered by theme, given by different business areas in the CSP. So in some of the themes, if you look at tools there, the scores are relatively consistent, whereas in others like skills or in analysis, it's a bit more hit and miss. And to be honest, that's not a huge surprise. You know, we have business areas that have always been data intensive and they've been staffed and tooled up for it. Whereas others are undergoing like quite rapid change, either in their own data needs or in the expectation that they'll support wider CSP data activities. So yeah, they might well be feeling the squeeze. And I don't think it's any coincidence that theirs aren't the voices that are generally front of mind when it comes to data development. So if you look here at the disparity in assessments of data leadership across the organization, essentially, we've got an almost tech native cluster there and a tech hesitant cluster. And you know, I think if you were to think about your own organizations, you can probably guess how that split would pan out for you lot. But this takes me to a couple of ways that this assessment is already showing its worth. So first of all, as an engagement exercise, and particularly with, you know, that tech hesitant cluster. So our HR department has been first out of the traps to call on my team to discuss their reflections, you know, having taken that assessment, you know, what they need, what they want it for, and how they want to go about it. And that's a win because, you know, HR is a real linchpin in any organization's data estate, and it's like it's especially combustible in a trade union context. And recently, we've been asking them to do a whole lot more with their data, like, you know, gender and ethnicity pay gap reporting and assembling metrics for our equity and diversity strategy. And now on their initiative, we're troubleshooting, you know, basically inflexible systems and access to disparate external data sources and the challenges of pulling it all together. And the quantitative assessment results really help here. They, you know, they kind of confirm and they calibrate the HR department's experience against what else is going on around the organization. And it turns out that they are asking for help exactly where it's going to have the biggest impact, the biggest return for the CSP as a whole. So the second benefit of this assessment is that it gives us a mechanism and a mandate to prioritize the needs of some of those less heard voices if and when they come into competition, into tension with more typical data projects and investments. Right, I'm going to get rid of these slides because they can be a bit of a distraction. Just while I say a little bit about what's happened since we took the assessment and what's coming up next. So this year we are already very heavily committed to big system replacement projects. We decided at the same time to replace both our subscription system and our finance system. And look, they really are essential modernization projects. But one of the lessons from this assessment is that tooling isn't really our weakness when it comes to data maturity. So we're kind of reining in the urge to run for more and bigger and fancier tech, and instead turning our energy towards things like strategic design and organizational design and process design factors. So, for example, we've been setting up federated data governance, which is going to beef up data leadership across all of our functions, and it's going to help align data activities to organizational purpose. We're developing a unified data model and a unifying vision for our data architecture, which is going to keep tech development strategically aligned and keep data flowing across domains. We're spinning up a master data management program, you know, prioritizing the assets and the data supply chains, getting it where it needs to go, where it's going to maximize returns to the CSP as a whole. But look, those are, I mean, I would say the bare foundations of data management. And some of it was going to be on the cards, regardless of the outcomes of the data maturity assessment. And yet, as Shan said, the assessment gives us a baseline against which we can start to measure their impact. So I hope when we come to reassess this at the end of the year, we're going to see more consistent scores for data leadership all the way across the board. And, you know, some of the other weaknesses evened out a bit, and the analysis a lot less manual. And of course, those foundations are there to build on, and we're coming up to the end of our current corporate strategy, and we're already talking about the role of data and data transformation in the next one. So what we're setting down right now could determine, you know, the success and the sustainability of what the next 5-10 years of data development. And I really don't want to be spending the rest of my career correcting for decisions that we make today. So we're going to use all the tools at our disposal to, you know, to true the foundations in good time. And a thoughtfully designed data maturity assessment is a really useful part of that.